Cynthia Albright's life had been a quiet rebellion. She had lived on the mining colony of Doria for the last 8 years. Ever since the Kiras had arrived and scattered her people across the galaxy. The Kiras, a species so old and powerful. They treated humans like playthings strong, beautiful creatures to be claimed as their own. They took what they wanted from the humans they captured, leaving little more than broken spirits behind. For many, it was the price of survival. For some, it was a way of life, but not for Cynthia. She had learned early on that survival meant silence. She knew that if she remained quiet long enough, no one would look at her twice. No one would claim her. Her strategy had worked well. Over the years, she became a ghost. Her small stature, dull clothing, and empty gaze made it easy for people to overlook her. In a galaxy filled with warriors, diplomats, and technology beyond human comprehension, she was nothing but a whisper in the wind. Nobody, that is. Until the rumors began. The Kiras were not a quiet empire. Their whispers echoed across the stars, carried on the backs of ships that traveled between worlds. One such whisper carried a name that chilled the hearts of all who heard it. Mazarak, the Unyielding. The Kiras king had been exiled for centuries after a great battle. He was a king in name only, cast out by his own people, left to fade into nothingness. But now he was back, and he wanted a companion. Cynthia had heard the whispers of Mazarak's return, while working in the colony's mines, and she knew what it meant. The moment the king laid his eyes on a human, they belonged to him. A human companion was a mark of status, a living trophy that could be displayed and shown off to the rest of the galaxy. Mazarak's return would mean a new wave of claiming, and that would mean trouble for her. The Kiras had always tried to claim the humans they encountered, but Cynthia had learned to hide in plain sight. She had perfected her silence, and with it, her survival. As the days went by, she could feel the tension growing in the air. The Kiras were gathering, ready to descend upon the colony. They were looking for someone, and Cynthia was afraid that someone might be her. One day, she walked through the crowded marketplace. She caught sight of something that made her freeze. It was an unmistakable sight, a ship, unlike any other. The colors on its hull were dark, and the sleek design screamed of alien technology far beyond what humans could create. The ship was unmistakable. It was the king's ship. Mazarak had arrived. The crowd parted as the ship landed, and for a moment everything seemed to stop. People scattered, running for their lives, leaving only those who had nowhere to go. Cynthia stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew it wouldn't be long before someone noticed her. She could already hear the whispers in the crowd. Do you think he'll take someone today? Or will he wait? They say he's come for a rare human. One who is different. Cynthia ignored them, keeping her head down as she walked quickly toward the alley where she lived. The fear was there in the back of her mind, but she refused to give in to it. She had been pretending to be mute for years, and she would continue pretending. She would be invisible. She just had to keep quiet, stay out of sight, and hope that the king would pass her by later that day. Cynthia found herself standing in front of a dark stone building, her heart racing. She had avoided detection so far, but she knew that her luck was running thin. The streets were empty now, but the silence was too heavy. Something was wrong. She could feel eyes on her, and her instinct screamed at her to run. She glanced over her shoulder, and there he was, the Kiras king. Mazarak, the Unyielding. He stood at the entrance to the alley, towering over her. His armor gleamed in the dim light, a black and silver design that seemed to absorb the surrounding shadows. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those eyes were intense. They seemed to see through her, piercing her very soul. He asked, his voice deep and commanding. Cynthia didn't answer. She couldn't. She had been practicing this for years. She had honed her silence to perfection, using it to her advantage. She knew the Kiras were not used to being ignored, and that would work in her favor. She just needed to wait. Mazarak took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. You are not mute by nature, he said, studying her with interest. You are hiding something. Still, Cynthia said nothing. He reached out, his cold fingers brushing against her arm. What is your name? His grip tightened just enough to remind her of his power. Speak. Cynthia's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. She could feel the king's presence, his power, but she remained unmoved. Her silence was her strength. Mazarek paused, his gaze still locked on her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them standing there in the quiet darkness. Then, with a growl of frustration, Mazarek turned and walked away. Cynthia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She hadn't been claimed. Not yet. She had survived another day. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Cynthia couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change. The Kira's king was not like the others. He was different. She had sensed it in his eyes. His power, his presence, it was overwhelming. He had seen her. And that, more than anything, scared her. But she wasn't going to give up yet. Cynthia was not just a survivor. She was a fighter. She had made it this far because she was smart, and she had learned to keep quiet when everyone else would shout. She would not be claimed. Not by anyone. Not even by the king himself. She closed her eyes, trying to calm her racing heart. Tomorrow would come, and she would face whatever it brought. But for now, she would rest. Because she knew this, the fight was far from over. Cliffhanger. The next morning, as Cynthia stepped outside, she saw the king's ship still looming in the distance, its dark hull casting a shadow over the entire colony. A sense of dread washed over her as she heard the footsteps of Kyra's soldiers approaching. They were looking for someone, and Cynthia knew that it was only a matter of time before they found her again. But this time, she would be ready. The days after Mazarek's encounter with Cynthia were strange. The king's eyes never left her. His presence seemed to linger heavy in the air, even when he wasn't near her. The people around her were nervous, whispering in hushed tones as they avoided her gaze. Cynthia felt it, the fear. She knew they had heard the rumors of the king's obsession with her. He had claimed her attention, and that was not something that happened often. Not with someone like her. Cynthia kept to her routine, working in the mines and walking the streets as she always had. She kept her head down, her mouth shut, and stayed out of the way. Her silence was her shield, and she wasn't about to let it slip now. But she couldn't ignore the truth. Mazarek had seen through her. He had recognized that she wasn't truly mute. He hadn't forced her to speak that day, but his gaze said everything. The king was patient. He was clever. And he would not stop until he had the answers he was looking for. That morning, Cynthia prepared to leave her small apartment. She heard heavy footsteps outside her door. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected them to find her this soon. The Kira's soldiers had finally come for her. She hesitated for only a moment, before slipping out the back door and into the alley behind the building. She moved quickly, her mind racing. There was no time to waste. The soldiers were already searching the streets, and soon they would be combing every corner of the colony. They wouldn't stop until they found her. She knew the route by heart. Through the back alleys, around the market, past the old dockyards. She had done this 1,000 times. The Kyras never looked in the places that humans had made their homes. They were too focused on the grand buildings and the important people. The king's soldiers were used to finding only the weak or the unimportant. But not Cynthia. She wasn't weak, and she wasn't going to let them take her. As she rounded a corner, she almost collided with a tall figure. Startled, she froze, looking up. There, standing before her, was Mazarek. For a moment, the world stood still. His dark, intimidating presence was as overwhelming as ever. His armor gleamed in the dim light, his eyes fixed on her with that same intensity. He had followed her here. How? She didn't know, but the look on his face told her everything. He had been waiting for this moment. Why are you running? His voice was deep, calm, and dangerous. You can't escape me, you know. Cynthia didn't answer. She couldn't. Her silence was all she had left. Mazarek took a step forward, closing the distance between them. You think you can hide forever? You are not like the others. I've seen it in your eyes. You have a mind that is far too sharp to be ignored. I know you are hiding something from me, but that will not last much longer. She held her breath, refusing to show fear. Her body tensed, but she didn't move. She was trapped, but she wouldn't let him see her weakness. Not now. Not ever. The king seemed to notice her resistance, and for the first time, a small smile flickered on his lips. "You are strong, human," he said softly. "I respect that, but it will not save you." With that, he reached out, his hand closing around her wrist with surprising gentleness. Cynthia's heart raced, but she didn't resist. She couldn't. "You will come with me now," he said. "No more running." The ship was a thing of beauties, sleek, dark, and powerful. The Kairos ship that Mazarek had arrived in was unlike anything Cynthia had ever seen. It was unlike anything humans could ever build. The ship seemed to hum with energy as they boarded, the air thick with a strange, almost electric tension. Cynthia followed Mazarek through the corridors, her mind spinning. She was being taken away, dragged into the heart of the Kairos Empire, and she had no idea what to expect. She had heard stories of the king, of his cruelty and his strange obsession with human companions. But Cynthia had never been one to go down without a fight. Mazarek led her into a room at the back of the ship. It was a large, imposing chamber, its walls lined with ancient symbols and strange designs. The floor was made of dark stone, cold and smooth beneath her feet. A throne stood at the far end of the room, and Mazarek moved toward it, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He turned to her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I want you to understand something, human," he said. "I didn't bring you here to harm you. I brought you here because I see something in you. You are not like the others. You have the potential to be something more." Cynthia didn't respond. She couldn't, but she watched him carefully, trying to gauge his true intentions. What did he mean by that? What was it that he saw in her? Mazarek continued, as if he were reading her thoughts. "I've seen humans before, but none like you. Your silence is not weakness, it is strength. You have been hiding for years, pretending to be something you are not. But I know better." His words sent a chill down her spine. He wasn't wrong. She had been hiding, pretending to be mute, pretending to be weak. But why was he so interested in her? What made her different? He studied her for a moment, his gaze intense and searching. Then he spoke again. "I can see you are afraid. You think I want to break you, to claim you as a trophy like the others? But that is not what I want. Not yet." Cynthia felt a flicker of something hope. Or was it just curiosity? She couldn't tell. But she didn't let it show. She was still on edge, still unsure of what this king wanted from her. "You're not like them," Mazarek said quietly. "I can feel it. You're smarter than most humans. You're stronger. And I think you can help me help you." Cynthia finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Why would I help you?" Mazarek's eyes softened, but there was still a hint of steel in his gaze. "Because, human, I'm offering you a choice. You can help me reshape this empire, or you can remain a prisoner of it. The choice is yours. But I believe you will choose wisely." As the days passed, Mazarek kept Cynthia close. She wasn't locked in a cell or chained. Instead, she was given a place at his side, as though he were testing her. Watching her every move, he didn't press her to speak, but he continued to observe her carefully. And in the quiet of their shared spaces, Cynthia began to see something different in him. He wasn't the cruel monster she had imagined. He was powerful, yes, but there was a complexity to him, a vulnerability that she hadn't expected. Still, Cynthia never let her guard down. She knew better than to trust the king. He was still the ruler of the Kira's empire, the one who controlled life and death for so many. But as she spent more time with him, she started to wonder, could this be her chance? Was there something in his offer that she could use to her advantage? Cynthia's heart pounded as she made her way to the throne room. Every step felt heavier than the last. She had spent days observing Mazarek, trying to understand what he wanted, trying to figure out his game. But now, she had no choice. She had to meet him, to face whatever decision awaited her in that cold, imposing room. As she stepped into the throne room, the sight of Mazarek waiting for her by his throne made her pause. His posture was relaxed, but there was a tension in the air that even the powerful Kiros king could not hide. He had been watching her closely, studying her every move, and now it seemed he was ready to take the next step. "You came," Mazarek said, his voice low and steady. Cynthia stood tall, her silence still holding firm. She wasn't afraid not anymore. She had seen enough of the Kiraz Empire to know that the only way to survive was to remain strong, to remain in control of herself. She wasn't going to let him see her falter. "I've been thinking about what you said," she finally spoke, her voice steady. "You say you want me to help you reshape your empire, but I don't trust you." Masarek's eyes softened just a little, though his gaze remained as intense as ever. "You don't have to trust me, human. I don't expect trust right away. But what I'm offering is more than what the Kiraz can give you. I'm offering you a choice, something no one else in your galaxy has ever been given. Freedom, power, the chance to stand at my side. Not as a prisoner, but as an equal." Cynthia was quiet for a moment, processing his words. She had never been one to act on impulse. She had spent 8 years hiding, surviving. But now, standing in this room with Mazarek, she saw something different in him. Was it genuine? Or was it another trick? She couldn't be sure. "What do you expect from me?" she asked, meeting his gaze directly. "Why me?" Mazarek leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the armrests of his throne. "Because you are not like the others. You have spent years pretending to be weak, hiding in plain sight. But I know you are strong. I know you could lead if you chose to." Cynthia took a deep breath. "And if I refuse? If I choose to remain silent, to remain as I am?" Mazarek's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Then you will remain a prisoner of this empire, a prisoner of your own fear. But you do not want that, do you?" For the first time, Cynthia wasn't sure. The Kiraz had stripped away so much from humanity: hope, freedom, control. And yet here was Mazarek offering her something that no one had ever given her, a chance to break the chains. But at what cost? "You want me to join you," Cynthia said slowly, "to help you conquer the empire, to be by your side while you rule? But I have no loyalty to you. Not yet." "I don't ask for your loyalty," Mazarek said quietly. "I ask for your trust, even if it is small. You do not have to be loyal to me. But if you help me, I will make sure that the Kiraz Empire will change. We will no longer claim humans as trophies, no longer oppress those who are different. I want to rebuild, to reshape everything that has gone wrong." Cynthia stared at him for a long time, thinking. She had heard of the Kiraz Empire's power, their cruelty. She had lived through it. But there was something in Mazarek's eyes now, something that told her this was not a lie. He wasn't like the others. But could she truly trust him? Could she believe that he would follow through on his words? Her mind raced, and she thought of everything she had been through, the years of pretending to be mute, the constant fear of being claimed, the isolation, but she had survived. And now she had a chance to make a difference. "I'll help you," she said finally, her voice clear and resolute. "But not because I trust you completely. I'll help you because I believe in something more than just survival. I believe in freedom." Mazarek's eyes brightened. For the first time, a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. It wasn't a cruel smile. It wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of understanding. "You have made the right choice, Cynthia," he said softly. "The right choice for both of us." The next few days were a whirlwind. Cynthia was no longer a prisoner. She was no longer a silent, overlooked figure. Instead, she was now at Mazarek's side, working with him to formulate a plan. It wasn't easy. It wasn't without danger. But it was a plan that could change everything. Mazarek introduced her to his closest allies, those who supported his vision for a new Kiraz Empire. They were a small group, but their conviction was unwavering. They all believed in the same thing, that the Kiraz could no longer rule the galaxy as they had. There had to be a better way. As the days passed, Cynthia learned more about Mazarek. He wasn't the monster she had imagined. He was ruthless when he needed to be, but he wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. He had a vision, a goal. And for the first time in her life, Cynthia realized that she had a role to play in that vision. It was not easy. It was not without risk. But together, they began to gather support. They worked in the shadows, sending messages to those who had suffered under the Kira's rule, encouraging them to rise up. They promised them a future where humans could live freely, where no one would be claimed again. The rebellion grew slowly at first, but the more they spread their message, the more people joined. And soon, Mazarak and Cynthia found themselves leading an army of people who had been oppressed for far too long. It wasn't just a rebellion of humans either. There were Kyraz who had come to see the truth in Mazarak's vision. It's those who were tired of the old ways, those who wanted change. The first battle was a small one, but it was a victory. It gave them the confidence to keep going. They were not just surviving anymore. They were fighting for something more. Cynthia stood at Mazarak's side as they planned the next move. She had never imagined this being a leader in her own right, standing with the most powerful being in the galaxy as an equal. She had never thought it possible. But here she was, a key player in the revolution that was shaking the Kiros. Empire to its core. Cliffhanger conclusion. The final battle was near. The Kiras were gathering their forces, preparing to crush the rebellion once and for all. Cynthia knew that this would be the moment of truth. If they lost, it would all be over. The Kiras would return to their old ways. All the people who had joined the rebellion would be lost. But Cynthia had faith. She had faith in Mazarak, in their cause, and in the people who had joined them. Together, they could change the galaxy. They could end the reign of the HFY Raz. As Mazarak turned to her one last time before the battle, he said, "We fight together now, Cynthia. No matter what happens." Cynthia nodded, her heart pounding. She had come so far, and now there was no turning back. The revolution had begun.